Let's turn that on. We will call to order the ZBA meeting for September 19th, 2018. First item on our agenda is 154, 156 Northborough Road. Special permit application. The applicant has requested an extension to reschedule the next hearing due to the fact that he is in front of the planning board on October 15th. And consequently, because of that timing, we will also need to extend the decision deadline. These two dates are entirely up to us. He has agreed to do whatever we need to do. So the first thing we kind of have to do in order to even discuss, like, get to a point where we take a vote on extending the deadline for a decision is pick a date for our October meeting.
For the whole meeting?
Yeah, everything we're gonna do in October will be this date.
Okay.
Looking at my schedule, I have us down for the 17th anyway, just as like the placeholder I always put in here, which is great because I'm out of town on the 24th, and I don't think anybody wants to meet on Halloween.
We could
So-
dress up.
We could all wear funny hats. I don't think that's the plan.
Oh, okay. 17 sounds good.
Does the 17th work for everybody? Yeah. Okay, so we will put our next meeting for the 17th of October.
Right?
So I would entertain a motion to continue this hearing to our meeting on October 17th. And I say we give him 7 p.m. again, as we always do. And extend the decision deadline to November 15th, 2018, which gives us enough time to write and post our opinion.
If by chance it has to go to another meeting, should we extend it to a little bit later in November?
I think on the October meeting, if it has to be extended again, we will also make sure that we extend the decision deadline.
Okay.
So, anyone want to make that motion?
I propose that we extend the 154, 156 Northborough special permit to October 17th at 7 p.m.
Continue.
Continue.
Yeah, let's try.
We continue the hearing on 154 to 156 Northborough Road to October 17th at 7 p.m.
Second?
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And then a motion to extend the decision deadline to November 15th, 2018.
So moved.
Second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Okay. October 17, 2018. Today's the 19th. All right, we have 9 whole minutes before we can go to 22 Main Street, so want to take this moment to talk about executive session meeting minutes. We have some executive session meeting minutes that were done from meetings a while back. Debbie, I'm not sure you were even on the board at that point. Dave, you were, but you might have still been an alternate. I don't even know, but we have some that we need to approve. We're not allowed to discuss the minutes in open session, but if no one has any comments on them, we can approve them in open session. So on our October 17th meeting, we'll put a item to approve the executive session meeting minutes. Karen will distribute them to everybody. No comments back to Karen about any issues in them or anything else. When we come to the October 17th meeting, I'll just ask, is everybody ready to approve them? And if so, we'll take the vote to approve them. If anybody answers no, then we'll have to schedule an executive session meeting to hash it out. So I just want to give everybody a heads up that that's what we're gonna be doing on these. These are older executive session meetings, so there was some confusion over the fact that they can't be released because the matters that were discussed are still pending for, I think, most of the minutes. And unclear processes as to whether or not we could approve them in open session or if we had to go back into executive session. That's been cleared up. So we're ready to go and we have a plan, so long as nobody has any comments next October 17th, we'll be able to approve those. The next meeting. So, since we still have a little bit more time.
Or do you think you need to wait?
Probably need to wait.
All right.
My sense is we need to wait to do the continuance and extension of 120 Main Street, because it's not officially
Yes.
on until 7:30 in case anybody shows up.
Correct.
So the other thing I just wanted to mention is that we had our information session with Aldo a week and a half ago. And speaking for myself, I think it was informative for all of us to be able to have that kind of educational session where we could talk about our processes, how we view things, where our stuff lies. I know the planning board had their session the following week, and we were intended to have a joint session where we could all talk on September 29th. Aldo has a conflict, so he is trying to search for another date. So we are not meeting on the 29th. If that's on your calendar, you can scratch it off and plan something else. So far, the dates that he's suggested to me, I'm out of town for 2 of them and already busy for 1. I suggested another date, I haven't heard back. So right now, it's just still out there pending. So everybody can kind of just sit back and wait to hear what potential dates show up. So.
Okay.
And with that, we've got 5 more minutes before we can entertain Mr. Perry. So if somebody wants to put us in recess for 5 minutes, that would be great, because then we can.
I move that we take a 5-minute recess.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
All in favor? Aye. All right, we are in recess for 5 minutes. We'll rejoin at 7:15. All right, we're going to call our zoning board of appeals meeting back into session. Next up on the agenda is 22 Main Street, Mr. David Perry. I think when we saw you last, there were a couple things that you were going to get for us, which one of the most important is the stamped engineer's site plan. Fantastic.
Thank you, sir. So this is just a,
Oh, that's, the main thing's over here. We got
we'll
the,
just pass it down then?
yeah,
Thank you.
I couldn't copy it because it's too big.
yeah.
I'm David Parry, 22 Main Street. I'm just very briefly going over this again, very briefly.
Can you grab the microphone to go with you?
Yeah. Is that on?
Yep.
So very briefly again, the house here, 22 Main Street, existing and proposed, and the two problems with it. The front entrance can't be used because it leads into a front hall which is blocked by a bathroom there, and the middle hall is there. And also the kitchen's very small, and too small for the house, which has 5 bedrooms. So this problem is solved by adding an addition there, so the blue connects to the blue, and that bit of blue, that corridor is moved outside and reduced over there, and the kitchen is pushed out into the side porch. So you end up with a bigger kitchen and a usable front door. And so the pink is the future porch, which you can see the new porch roof, new porch roof. The blue is the inside corridor. And if you do this, I need a special permit because the setback here from this corner of the porch nearest the street comes down to 22.7 feet front yard setback, which is 2.9 feet more than already existing from the existing front porch right there. 2.9 feet more, 22.7, and on the side is 2 feet more, making it 13. And the requirements are 30 and 15. And that's what it'll look like down there. I explained that before.
Yep.
And then you asked me to give you a survey, which I've gotten there. You see the front porch is considerably wider than the side porch because it, otherwise it wouldn't look right. You're going to have chairs on it and so forth. And, oh yes, the other thing you asked me to do was show you what conditions exist in the neighborhood with regard to side yards setbacks now. And so this is a assessor's map, and I've marked and put in yellow the buildings which have already got non-conforming side yards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I haven't counted those because they're business. So you've got 14 out of 19 houses. 73% of the houses on Main Street have a non-conforming side yard, and the front yard is slightly less non-conforming, about 60%. So what else do I have? You asked me, I think the regulations require me to give you a draft decision, which I gave you. Well, I hope you got that. And then I think that's it.
Okay. Any comments from the gallery? All right, any comments from us on the view of the variance or the, exactly, not a variance, it's just the, I want to make sure my termination is correct. It's been a while since I looked at the actual special permit. Any comments on where Mr. Perry is at and how we feel about it?
Well, I agree there. I guess downtown Main Street, there is quite a few pre-existing non-conforming structures.
Yeah.
I don't think if you say it's not 73% of all of Main Street, that, you know, as you leave downtown.
Right.
So of what you're using for a locus, I guess. That,
Yeah, I think
you
you
know,
said the historic neighborhood part of
So
Maine,
that's-
so yeah.
So, you know, I agree with that. I mean, I understand, in a sense, what you're, you know, trying to do and trying to accomplish. I mean, I guess it doesn't appear that there's, you know, a lot of objection from neighbors and abutters on this. I know in the past, if something is encroaching forward, you know, does it create a safety issue? Does, you know, Public Works not be able to, you know, plow driveways or I mean, plow streets or maintain? I don't think that, you know, I don't think that really comes into play here, so.
Yeah, I think our criteria is, you know, detrimental to the neighborhood.
Right, and I don't think it's detrimental to the neighborhood, and I don't think it causes a safety hazard in the, you know, in the winter with snow removal or anything, where we've, like, you know, had to consider that on other properties. I mean, I get the front of the house, there is sort of a, you know, pre-existing condition there that is actually being expanded on. You know, we talked last month, the side there is creating a new situation, so I think that's something a little different, so that's my opinion.
Okay.
I'm in agreement as well. I think it's not substantially detrimental. I think this really shows a good job that I think we asked him to show that there's consistency in his neighborhood with, you know, a non-conforming side yards, and I think this isn't out of the ordinary. I think what he's trying to do is consistent with his local area, so I'm okay with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree with that. I think what he's trying to do is certainly consistent. He showed at the last meeting with other, you know, similar structures. I think given the location of the house, you know, we asked about the side yard setback. I think he's done what we asked of him. So I don't have a problem with it.
Okay. Andrew?
I feel, I think the same way that Paul does. I feel the same way I did last time. I also want to, could I see the plot plan really quickly? So, I looked at the new plan and just compared the setback measurements from what was in your original submission. They're not materially different. They're just like a foot or two off. And I agree that I support the special permit with respect to the front setback because it's not detrimental to the neighborhood. But as to the side setback, just because of the reading of the law that I had done last time, I think you do need you need to apply for a variance for that because it introduces a new non-conformity because you currently comply with the side setback. And that's not to say that I'm against granting that relief. I just think that technically that's the right way to do it. So I'm in favor of granting the special permit with respect to the proposed front porch, and then not in favor with respect to the side porch just because I think that it needs to be considered under a variance application.
So, I hear what you're saying. And I think where I was trying to go with asking him to create the idea of where the neighborhood is kind of a concept of a modal setback and a modal, you know, where's the norm within an area so that becomes kind of, instead of the strictly prescribed setback, that becomes kind of, as long as you're within that modal setback, you're still not necessarily really asking for a variance. And in my head, that's where I was going. I think Andrew might be right by the law of it's still a variance, it's just it's supported, the support we need to give that variance is the fact that it's a modal setback. And I'm gonna apologize to you for not saying it right the first time, I think, but I do think Andrew's right on the law side of it. I don't know how strongly we can all sit here and say that the variance wouldn't really be an issue, but I think we're all in favor of the general concept. It's just, you know, crossing Ts and dotting Is, if that makes sense to you. So with that being the case, does everybody kind of understand that concept and buy into the general sense of it? I think at this point, the idea would be to take a vote on approving a special permit. Can we approve the special permit with the incorrect side yard, or can we approve it with the condition that he gets a variance for the side setback?
With a condition.
I think approving it with the condition that he get a variance for a side setback would be the way.
Yes.
And then Mr. Perry submitted a draft decision, which is helpful, actually, because it does kind of point out the things that we need to make sure we touch on as we, you know, craft our vote on this in terms of, you know, existing non-conforming on the front setback, additional encroachment is not detrimental, you know, those types of things, so we make sure we craft our decision and our vote correctly. I haven't had a chance to look at this in a great deal of detail yet, because he just handed it to us. But if somebody's had more time looking at it and wants to try and craft a vote that takes into account our key points of existing, non-conforming, no additional detriment, conditioned on a variance of getting a variance for the side yard?
I think I could take a stab at it. So, Mr. Perry, the numbers in here, do they match up with the numbers in the plot plan?
Yes.
Okay. So on paragraph 6, the second to last sentence, the house is a pre-existing non-conforming structure, comma, because the existing front yard setback is 25.6 feet.
What paragraph are you on now?
6.
Which does not conform to the,
What line, sorry, I'm a bit confused. What
It's
line
actually
are you
two places.
He kind of went through the houses situated there, and then went to the last sentence, really. The house is a pre-existing non-conforming structure because the front yard setback
is,
25.6, where it's required to be 30.
It is. The
Yep.
thing is, you have to realize on your survey there, the line goes to the point, you know, it's 25.6 to the front.
You need the
Oh,
microphone. We're
Um,
talking about existing, not proposed.
You see, here's the,
Sorry.
here we go.
I think I see what he's.
Here's another survey, you see, which
Yeah.
the actual front, you see, goes to the porch itself is 25.6. Do you see?
Yep.
There, do you see? 25.6 to the front of the porch. You see that? He doesn't take it to the front of the porch, he's taking it to the corner. Do you see? So
Okay, the existing condition
yeah,
is.
that is
is
the
to the
existing
porch.
condition. It's 25.6 to the front of the porch, right there. But that's not shown on this plan because he's going to
Okay.
that corner. Do you see what I
I-
mean?
But I was gonna say, the house is a pre-existing non-conforming structure because the existing front yard setback is 25.6 feet, comma, which does not conform to the current 30-foot setback requirement.
Okay. Yep, we're all on the same page there.
And do you want to add there that the existing side yard
Yes,
setback?
the existing,
Setback's not in
the
there.
existing side yard setback is 19.1 feet, comma, which does conform to the current
Can I see your existing condition survey again?
But even that,
15.
on the survey plan, it shows 18.5.
Yeah, I know, that's,
Yeah.
See, that one's 19.1.
Andrew?
Approximately.
yeah, approximately 18.5. Mr. Perry, can we keep this for the record? Thank you.
And I think the key finding we need to make is that it's not substantially, yeah,
Substantially detrimental to the neighborhood?
yeah. Is not more substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. And meets the specific requirements of 174-9, and I think the rest of it's fine.
And then just the condition of it that he gets a variance for the side yard setback.
Yeah,
Can you please word it so that, I get.
Microphone.
So I get you issue the special permit for the front, 23 feet, and just so in the event I can figure out a way not to go over the side yard, I can just live with that. And if I choose to come back for the side yard, I need a variance. Do you see what I mean? So
Well,
it's
if
kind
you're
of a-
not, if what you're doing to the side is still within the boundaries, then that's not,
Yeah,
I mean, that's-
yes, exactly, of course, all right.
So
Fine
the,
then.
the condition would be to get a variance for any encroachment on the
Yeah.
side yard, if it were to happen.
Right.
Okay,
Andrew, will it be per that plan? When you make your vote, will it be
per the
that
site plan
I get what
dated.
you're saying. You don't want to have to go get a special for no reason, but,
Yeah.
Just to keep it
right.
in mind.
You got that? For the-
okay, so, I mean, I just wrote this really quickly, that this, you got the substance of it, and then,
Yeah.
does that sound all right?
Yep.
And then, so the ZBA approves a special permit as follows: minimum yard setback shall be front 23 feet, and then period, any encroachment,
22.7 feet
okay, shall be 22.7 feet
yeah.
per
site plan dated September 14th, 2018.
per site plan dated,
September 14th, 2018.
and then period, any sought after encroachment on the side yard setback shall require a separate variance application.
Okay? You wanna? Ready?
Okay. I move that the board approve, well, first off, should we close the public hearing?
Oh, yeah. Should we close, let's close the public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing on this matter.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye? I always forget that.
Okay.
I move that the board approve Mr. Perry's special permit application. Minimum yard setback shall be front yard 22.7 feet per site plan dated 9/14/18. Any sought-after encroachment on the side yard setback shall require a separate variance application.
I second that.
All in favor? Aye? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Perry.
Do you have this in Word format?
Electronic?
Emailed it.
It's all right. You
Okay.
did email? When did you email?
Oh, this morning. Oh, didn't you get it?
I didn't get it.
Oh, well, I've got it here. It's
Yeah.
on my.
Because if you email it to Karen in Word format, then
that's
it's
fine.
Yeah,
really
yeah.
easy to translate.
Andrew,
I
can
think I
have
sent it
that?
to you as an attachment.
I'll
Yeah.
keep that for the file.
And I'll give you my chicken scratch.
Yeah,
here.
that'd be great. I'm gonna depend on you anyway. After I write it.
Okay. So that is taken care of. Next item on our agenda is 120 Main Street. The applicants have asked for a continuance and an extension of the decision deadline. So, the continuance would be to our meeting on October 17th. And should we put them as a second item, since we have 7:15?
Sounds good?
Yep. Can I?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, there's just one thing. I know that the applicant's not here, but there's one thing that I just wanted to kind of state so that the applicant, in preparing for the next meeting, something that I thought of, that for me, it would be helpful that at the next hearing, if they have some documentation of, they said that,
Ledge
was-
and groundwater.
exactly, the last permit called for them to build this tunnel, but then they explored it and it wasn't feasible. Do they have documentation showing that they indeed explored it and that it indeed wasn't feasible? That's all.
I would agree. I've been thinking about that as well. It's a good call. So hopefully they watch the tape and hear this.
Send them an email.
Karen can send them an email to make sure that they are preparing that for the next meeting. That would be great. So I would entertain a motion to continue this item to October 17th, 2018 at 7:15 PM.
So moved?
Do I have a second?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. And then a motion to extend the decision deadline to November 15th, 2018.
So moved?
Second?
I'll second.
Paul second. All in favor? Right. Paul? Yep, good. Okay. Our next item is not until 7:45, so we've got another I'm wondering if we should start scheduling these things, 5 minutes apart. Maybe next time. Well,
There's been a
let's
few
all think
meetings
about
where,
that.
where people have sat here for 2 hours also waiting.
I know, it's kind of one of those things, but,
You think we should take a recess?
I just want to make that comment, that maybe next time in our meeting, we think about how we want to schedule future extensions and continuances, just to make sure we're not
You never know.
sitting around. So, but anyway, I would take a motion to have a recess until 7:45.
I'll make a motion to recess till 7:45.
Second? David, second. All in favor? All right. We are in recess. We're going to bring the meeting back into session, 7:45. The next item on our agenda is 97 Main Street. The contact for this one is also the contact for the item at 8 PM. He's not here at the moment, so right now I would entertain a motion to postpone the 97 Main Street item until 8 PM, since it is the same person. And since he's not here at the moment, and then we can go back into recess.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
All right, all in favor? Okay, and then do we need to move to go into
You
recess?
have to go
Or
back to recess, right? You have to vote.
to entertain a motion to go into recess until 8 PM?
I'm good at this. I'll make a motion that we go into recess until 8 PM.
Second? David seconds, all in favor? We are in recess. All right, we're going to call our zoning board of appeals meeting back into session. I understand Mr. Bemis was stuck in traffic, so good thing we continued the 97 Main Street item. Mr. Bemis has submitted a letter requesting, actually, Karen, you usually read these things, go for it.
Dear board members, on behalf of Quality Framing Incorporated, owner and applicant of the above referenced property, we are writing to respectfully request that the petition for the special permit for the construction of the proposed freestanding two-car garage be withdrawn without prejudice, so that a new filing may be made at a future date and that can be more accurately describe the existing and proposed site conditions at the subject property. Thank you for your consideration of this request. Very truly yours, Engineering Design Consultants.
If, to kind of bring the audience who wasn't here at the last meeting up to speed or didn't read didn't see us on Southborough Access Media, the application described an existing two-car garage, when in actuality there's an existing three-car garage. Since it got noticed improperly, and therefore the abutters and the public may not have known the exact scope of what they were asking, it was deemed more appropriate to withdraw that application, resubmit with the accurate information so that the notice went out. Therefore, he's asking that we just dismiss it without prejudice so they can go about and do that properly and get the right information out. So at this point, I would entertain a motion to, what's the official request?
Yeah.
Withdraw without prejudice.
To allow the applicant to withdraw without prejudice.
I'll make a motion to accept the withdrawal without prejudice.
Second?
All in favor? Great. All right. The main event. Next up on our schedule here is 2 East Main Street, Watershed Investment Corp., special permit application. Before we hand it over to the applicant to update us on what he's found out, I wanted to make a couple of things known. One of the things that we had asked for at the last meeting that we were looking to get information on is, where does the board go when something isn't specifically defined one way or the other? And so Mark Robidoux, our building commissioner, asked the town council to opine on this. We have an opinion. There's copies up here for people that want it. This will be made part of the record, so I'm not going to read it word for word, but the general intent is things that are specifically omitted are prohibited. And trying to think if there's, that was kind of the background of where you go to look for definitions is, I'm trying to remember, I want to say the name correctly. Black's Dictionary, which is a standard law dictionary, or even Webster's Dictionary, basically generally accepted dictionaries to gain the definition of a particular term. We were looking to get guidance on how you could interpret hotel or motel. And the applicant, although that's what we were looking for, the applicant's application actually references apartments, which, since it is omitted, is specifically prohibited in the application as it stands right now, according to town council. The other thing I wanted to mention is that I received via email 10 letters of support. And I will not read the email specifically in favor of time. Again, they will be part of the record and posted, but I will mention the people that sent them in. We have Karen Zelnick, 16 Orchard Road. Kimberly Laurie, 10 Learned Street. Wendy Bazell, did not give an address. Adam Benson. That's Karen Zelnick. Yvonne Pojani. Leah and Phil Whiteley, 3 William Callery Lane. Kristen Gould, who's Kathy Dunsmore, 3 Hubley Lane. And Catherine Rose are the people that sent in letters of support, expressing their opinion that the project is similar to what they have been expecting in that area and would like to see. With that, I will hand it over to Mr. Bemis to talk about where he stands with his application and how he'd like to proceed.
Peter Bemis, Engineering Design Consultant, so I'm here on behalf of Watershed Investment Corp. I would advocate that my permit did have an asterisk at the end of it where it did say residential apartment, because that is not a defined term in the bylaw. So I am trying to define it with my entire application as a complete package, and it does indicate that that's what that asterisk intended to mean. And if you read the whole thing collectively, which was also my hearing notice that went to the newspaper, which was also mailed to all my abutters, in that I described the residential units, which again is where we're trying to go with this whole thing. So I'd like to continue to go with my application because this is why I came, this is why I filed, and that's what it's all about. But you know, if you're not inclined to have me hear it, then you can make that your position, and I'll sit back down again.
I think with, this is my opinion, I'm not going to speak for the rest of them. Based on the opinion of council, because it says residential apartment on the application, and I know there's an asterisk and how you get to a definition, the use of the word apartment, since it is not in the bylaw and therefore is expressly prohibited, is a technical issue for me.
Okay, but you as a board render a decision, and your decision, what I'm trying to get to, are what are the allowable uses. And all I'm really looking for, and what I've stated from the start, is that I am looking for the board to grant multiple allowable uses.
Right.
And I think we've narrowed that down.
And I
at this
agree
point,
that,
and you're the only authority that can do the multiples. Otherwise, I go forward with what is a single use, which to me is not as desirable a project.
Yep.
And I can advance without even coming to you.
I agree.
And I don't really want to do that project.
so, yes, the idea of multiple uses in this area is absolutely something that we have authority to do. Again, where I'm going with how I'm reading the advice of town council is that because one of your uses is expressly prohibited by the bylaw, that's not a use we can approve, because at town meeting last year, everybody stripped the zoning board of granting use variances.
Correct. But
So,
I'm not asking you to give me that use if that's what we determine as we go through this, because I just got this.
I
As
know.
usual, I come into a meeting, I have to file everything with you 3-4 weeks in advance, and then I have 1 week notice to get you any other change prior to a meeting.
Yeah.
But no one else seems to have to follow that. At the last meeting, you got things hours before a meeting. Tonight, it happens again. Here I am, and I have to react to what I get. And I'm trying to do this without counsel. I'm trying to do this out of my own pocket. And I don't mean to get aggressive with you, but I am very disappointed that I get this at the last minute.
I completely understand. And I'm trying to,
Then continue to be fair. Let me make my presentation. I think at the end of the day, I'm right. I'm asking you to grant an approval. I know you had a recent project on Northborough Road. I don't mean to use another project, but I think they asked you for every single thing they could in that district. And I believe you gave them that approval, that they could pick and choose all those different uses. My application's really no different. I'm only asking you for those uses that you can grant me. If my application had an asterisk in it, and if one of those uses isn't allowed, strike it out. That's a condition of your approval. I will accept that. All I want to do is get approval for the uses that the zoning bylaw will allow me. Nothing more. I want nothing more from this board. I wouldn't want to ask you for anything different. Town council wants to just muddy the waters. That's what happened at the last meeting. I feel like I'm getting the water all muddy again. And I'm trying to keep it clear. We found a way to do this project. I'd like to go forward with the project. I'm confident that it's the right project. It's a very large financial investment for me. So believe me, I want to get it right. But if I can't do it here, it's been suggested to me to go to town meeting and try to convince 150 citizens in the community to do it. I'm not doing that. Not going to happen.
I totally agree. Getting a
Use
use variance
variance,
out of town
forget
meeting
it.
is a
If
point
I
of
can't
the
convince
past.
you five, I'm not going there to do 150. So I'd like to continue to talk to you five with my application. And if it doesn't go anywhere, then I can pick up my blocks and, go away and probably post a sign and let someone else try this. Because that's really what it's at. This is the project that Peter Bemis wants to go forward with. I've held the property for 10 years now, and it's finally time to try to do something. And I'm right on point with what the EDC wanted and what most residents seem to want. I'm not sure if I was winning that popularity contest online. I don't read it, so I don't know if I'm winning or losing. When you don't have to put your name on something, I don't want to know what anybody thinks. If they want to put their name on it, then I'd be happy to know what they want to say.
Yep,
So
I-
that's
I
where I'm
hear
at.
ya.
So it's your call.
Well,
Yeah.
this is just my opinion. I think you should be permitted to, go forward with your presentation, and, I mean, that's unfortunate that it's our fault, and I apologize. We didn't get you the legal opinion came yesterday, and it got to you today. That's our fault. So I can understand your frustration, but it's an opinion. I know, Mr. Robidoux had a different opinion about how to interpret the zoning bylaw. I mean, we are the entity that decides that. Mr. Cipriano is advising us, but he's not voting on it.
True.
So I do think that the ultimate issue is, it's an application to put in apartments in the business village district. And does the village district is that a permitted use in the business village district? And I also think that, so if you were going to town meeting, that would not involve seeking a use variance, because that term has acquired this very negative connotation. It would be to change the schedule of allowable uses within the business village district to include apartments, and then it would clearly be permitted, and I think there's probably far more public support for that than I think you're giving credit for, and that there's actually a good shot at it.
But Zach didn't accomplish anything in the, 5 years, I think it's been? I think I'm getting old, but it's probably been
Yep.
5 years, 6 years Zach's gone on, and nothing's happened. I just don't see it happening. And I don't need it. I'm very comfortable with what the allowable use is. Hotel, motel works just fine for me. And that's what is an allowable use. And a town council has, in my opinion, again, read it very fast, and I'm not a lawyer, but he seemed to have a conclusion, and he had a predisposed position to get to the conclusion. He knew what he wanted to say at the end, and then he found a bunch of words to stick to it. No disrespect to town council, and if he's here, I can't see him because I have my reading glasses on. But my point would be is that he kind of knew what he wanted to say, and he said it. But again, from my perspective, again, I'm asking you for 2 multiple uses in the district, and you're the only authority that can grant it. And if you don't grant it, then it's a single use. I'm still fine with my hotel motel as a single use. I'm still okay with an office building as my single use, or retail as my single use. I just don't see the others being financially viable without the mixture, and that's the problem. No one wants a second-story office building in downtown Southborough. I'm sorry. If they were lining up outside the door, I'd be the first guy to say, hey, I'll do it for you. They're just not. There's second full of retail. Faneuil Hall is probably the only example I know of that works. Anywhere else, I just don't see it ever working in a boutique situation. Not gonna work here in Southborough, so forget that. So what can I do on the square footage that I have, which requires me to do two-story, because I just don't have a lot of land here, on the second story? And the motel use is going to work, and I'm comfortable with that.
And I would agree with you that if your application said specifically motel, that would be a use that we could absolutely approve because it is specifically listed as a use.
But it's in your bylaw, and I'm asking you for an allowable use. So all you need to do is make your motion that you'll allow hotel motel in combination with the other applicable uses that are 1, 3, 5, and I think that works just fine. You give conditional approvals all the time. It's a special permit. And it's the decision of the board. You didn't give me a resident, you didn't give me an apartment, it's not a defined term in the bylaw. I'm good with that. I'm not asking you to give me that term. That term actually came up at the meeting. They were talking accessory apartment. Accessory apartment's never been in play. We were never talking about accessory apartment, but that's the term was used at the meeting, over and over and over again. We were never asking for that. Using the term residential apartment is a unit, a residential unit, R2, non-transient. All those terms go together. That's what we were trying to describe to you.
So to be clear on your application, right now your application says commercial office, residential apartment. You have the asterisk that kind of leads you into that that's a motel.
Whole narrative, right.
Are you basically asking for any allowable use within the business village district? Or are you really trying to be
Well, after I found out
specific?
what you did at Northborough Road, that I was, yes. When I saw that you were willing to kind of à la carte this, then I was like, oh, well, then I guess I would want to do the same thing. Because I have no user right now. The one thing that I do know, though, I'm confident with, is that there are folks who would be interested in having an extended stay opportunity in the community. That one I have confidence in. And I can then get a lender to give me a mortgage so I can develop and build the facility. But if I'm just gonna put up an office building in downtown Southborough, they're gonna say, show me your 60% occupancy here, for sure. I mean, I don't think they'll even do 50. And one of the uses is a bank, and I'm very fond of Marlboro Savings Bank. I am not interested in seeing a bank go across Marlboro Savings Bank, and that's who I will go to lend on this, and I would encourage anyone in the audience to use Marlboro Savings Bank. That's my pitch for them. Main Street Bank, that's right, it's changed. But that shows you how old I am. I've been with them for a long time. So that's where I'm at. I don't need the bank use. Unless they want to come across the street.
Yeah. So I'm inclined to let him continue on with his presentation and have us hear the comments of the people that have made the effort to show up today and view this in the sense of multiple uses that are allowable within the business village district. Anyone?
I'm okay.
Okay?
I don't have a problem with them presenting.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So, I know it seems, I had underlined, it says, no legal consequence at this time of all the structures have been demolished for the history of this property. So I'm gonna go off locus for a moment and just kind of talk about the zoning bylaw. I'm sorry, is it not working?
Well, can you grab that one, because when it's on tape, we can't hear you. Thank you.
So, Historical was kind enough to make some photos available, and I've had folks approaching me with some of these things that I had no idea about. This was the Deerfoot Farms boarding house, which was kind of up the road here, and you can see the church and whatnot in the distance here. So, again, turn of the century, you can see the horse and buggy there, but obviously a different time, different place, but here was a building that supported transient, non-transient type activity within it. Southborough Arms, it's a postcard for it. I don't know how many rooms were there. I do know a few other things about it. Quite a description of locations for it, what it is. Again, overnight, dinner, or because it was there, but also extended stay, non-transient. And the reason why I'm showing you these items is because there's continuity in why the bylaw reads the way it does. Again, another photo of, this is Crest, Hillcrest. Hillcrest, long and short visits to Southborough. So again, in keeping with where we're going with this, this is the 9-unit apartment building, but again, there's no apartment term in Southborough, so therefore, it's still a 9-unit hotel motel located on East Main Street. And then what we do have an example of today, and still there, is the Southborough Motor Lodge on Route 9. And that's 10 units, and it was called Shamrock Motel at the time. And it's still operating as a hotel motel. And again, I don't see anyone going there for, you know, a nightly stay. What's important from my perspective is, again, the history. When Southborough adopted its zoning bylaw in 1950s, they took the uses that were already occurring in that zoning district, and they included them in the zoning bylaw. And when they developed the bylaw, they put definitions in. I'm kind of going off my notes, so thank you. Thank you. So, when I, and again, I read Attorney Cipriano's commentary very quickly, but the point is that he's saying that there aren't some definable terms in zoning, okay? And I'm not going to disagree. I go to apartment, it's not here.
What did you?
This is right out of your zoning bylaw. I'm highlighting. Oh, I'm sorry. Article 1, miscellaneous provisions, Section 742, definitions. So I'm just going to go through. Again, we don't have apartment here, not a defined term. It would be located here if it was. Okay, I'm just going to go through all the definitions. So then the next definition would be hotel. Would be right here if it was going to exist. Doesn't exist. Housing for elderly is a defined term. The next would be motel, be located here if it existed, not a defined term. The next would be office, not a defined term. The next, again, and I'm taking the uses right out of the section that's applicable, village business, okay? Restaurant is a defined term, and I'm not sure when the actual definition went in, but it says an establishment primarily for servicing by a waiter, waitress, and a consumption of meals at tables or at a counter on the premises, okay? The next defined term would be retail. Again, not here. And that ends our defined terms. Article 3, use regulations. The reason why I'm coming back to this is because this is what I'm specifically asking you for, is that the Board of Appeals may by special permit allow several different uses if otherwise permitted in the district. Again, I'm asking you for only those permitted uses in the district, or several buildings. I'm not asking you for that component. If otherwise permitted in the district or several buildings on the same lot, if such or uses are deemed compatible, so I'm hoping you would see them as being compatible, meet the requirements of 174.9, and if you recall at the last meeting, I read the entire section of 174.9 and why I believe the project complied with that provision, and result in improved circulation and land use patterns. And again, I'm looking for your support on that, and I did outline that at the last meeting. So that's a section that I need help with you on. It's, again, for the section that only the ZBA can grant. No other approving authority in the community can do that. And it is for these uses in 174.84 Business Village District. And I'm not interested in newspaper job printing or publishing. So you don't have to list that use if you don't want to. I am looking for retail and services, office building, hotel or motel, the restaurant. And we can't have a drive-through. I'm not asking you for one. It does allow a few other uses, dwelling for a night watchman or janitor. I don't need that. Cafeteria for employees, not for the general public. I don't need that as well. And that's it. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. Right out of Southborough zoning. I'm not asking you for anything special. I did see Attorney Cipriano, and the other item that I underlined was that he does say several different uses if otherwise permitted. He adds emphasis in the district, which is that 174 section that I read to you, that you are allowed to grant under that. So I am asking you for that, and he's telling you you can. He also, with emphasis, because he underlines this, so I'll say it's limited to the extent applicable under the zoning bylaw. The requirements of a mixed-use special permit generally is appropriate, however, so long as the uses specified are clearly permitted under the bylaw. And again, I'm only asking you for those uses that are clearly identified. In his sum up, his conclusion, he's basically saying that because non-transient motels aren't a defined term, we can't do it. So I have a hard time with that because a non-transient or a transient, none of those motel definitions are here. There's not even a definition for office buildings, so we can't have those either because there's no definition for them. That makes no sense. So my point would be is that a conclusion was or a hypothesis, however you want to look at it. I remember when I had those chemistry classes, they told us what kind of the results were, then you kind of cook the books to get to where you want to be. I feel like that's what happened here, is that the decision was we don't want hotel motel, so we'll write an opinion that says that we don't want that, and you folks will kick the can down the road. I'm hopeful you won't. I'm hopeful that what I've come to you with is the right proposal. I'm asking you for only the allowable uses that are available. And again, I'm explaining to you why, because I don't see this being a financially viable project without having multiple uses added. There's just no way to do anything with that second story if I don't have the residential unit, whatever we want to call it. I don't want to use the word apartment because that seems to freak everybody out. The other item I would raise is the EDC. I don't know if they're here tonight, but I know they did have some support. I thought they were going to actually have a full vote of support. They got a letter at the last minute that seemed to imply that there was a zoning problem here, so I know they didn't vote in that sense, but I know they did speak at the last meeting. And their studies and their reports, I believe you were given copies of those, and it showed there was overwhelming support for having this type of use in the downtown area. I bought the project about, was it 2007, so about 11 years ago now, because I was trying to avoid a bad project coming forward. I had been asked to do a capacity analysis for a strip center. When that party left, I approached the owner and said, I want to buy it. The thought was that I'd put my office building down here. Things went in a different direction, unfortunately for me. And then we struggled with being able to reuse the property. We had septic issues we had to resolve and whatnot. And then it becomes financing at this point. I'm not some outsider. I've lived in town for 30 years. I've done other design projects in town. I try to do a very good job. The author of that letter that came to the IDC at the last minute was someone that I think I'm on the same page with her almost all the time. She does a lot of good work for this community. That was Freddie Gillespie's letter that came to them, and I like Freddie, but I didn't like her letter, and I'll still work with her in the future. I just didn't like her letter. It didn't work for me, obviously, with my project and my proposal. But here's somebody that I think I'm on the same page with most of the time, with open space and the good things that she's done, and I try to do those same things. I'm I'm trying to do what's good for downtown Southborough. It is a neighborhood, I do know that. If you look at the scale and scope of some of these other buildings that were there, this is on par with those. If anything, it has a little smaller stature than some of these other hotel motels that existed and some of these other larger buildings that are just gone. History is just, is taking them away. And I did talk to you about going to town meeting. I'm not gonna do that. So, that's pretty much my proposal. I don't know what else I gotta show you. I think I should have my site plan up, because I looked at the building. Again, that's the proposal. And again, the building would be on the corner of East Main and Newton Street. I look forward to your support. Thank you.
Thank you. This time we'll open it up to comments from the gallery. When you get up there, make sure the microphone's on, name, address for the record.
Mimi Luttrell, 19 Oregon Road. The issue here is that apartments are not an allowed use
Mimi,
in the
can you
zoning.
clarify if you're talking as an individual resident or if you're talking on behalf of the planning board?
I'm speaking as an individual, I'm not.
Okay, just want to make sure.
So the issue here is that apartments are not an allowed use in the zoning code. And the ZBA is being asked here for a special permit then for more than one use on a lot, and the uses have to be allowed within the zoning code. The application says apartments. The letter says residential units, which are apartments, and those are not an allowed use. You know, this may be a great project for this site, but it's not an allowed use in our zoning code. And the way that you change zoning code is go to town meeting for a 2/3 vote. The zoning board can't just allow a use that's not allowed in zoning code. That would be taking the rights away from the legislative body of this town. The fact that there are other pre-existing non-conforming apartments in the area is irrelevant. Like, when were they permitted? How were they permitted? Who knows? That is irrelevant to this hearing. And are we being asked to believe that a 4-room hotel is going to be there? There's case law that states that dwelling units, apartments, and lodging units, hotel and motel, are not the same. There's licensing required for hotel and motel. They're treated differently in Massachusetts sanitary law and Massachusetts fire codes. They're not the same. So swapping out a hotel or apartments for a hotel is not the same use. I also am concerned that in the letter from the building inspector, he stated that this project would be allowed by right if granted the special permit from the zoning board. But there are special permits for the use that are required from the planning board, and also there's a special permit site plan that's required from the planning board. And although this isn't before this board at this particular time, this project also does not meet the zoning requirements for the village business district. The setbacks are not right, the frontage is wrong. The village business district states that residential units within the district should comply with the zoning requirements of Res B, which this does not. Thank you.
Go ahead, sorry, I didn't.
Okay, no, it's okay.
No,
Someone's up.
Oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I'm Claire Reynolds, 104 Main Street. I had been on the EDC committee for 3 years, possibly 4, I can't really remember. And I am actually the interim coordinator on a contract until a coordinator is hired. But just speaking as a resident and taxpayer, so to speak, I just have a couple very simple questions that are procedural. So that understanding that you guys just got this letter today, the day of your meeting, probably you had jobs, so you don't really get a good chance to take a look at it. My question is very, very simple. What is your procedure for going and reviewing this letter from town council? And I'm not a lawyer. I am totally out of my league on this, but one simple question that I have is, on page 3, paragraph 2, it cites in 1997 the case of Lavoli versus the Southborough Zoning Board of Appeals. I suspect, I mean, I guess we would all have to, unless somebody has a really good memory, somebody would really have to go back and take a look and see what this particular case referenced. Okay, and the reason that I bring it up, and once again, I'm the first one to say I have no experience on this. It says that is inclusion of one use is exclusion of another, or uses not listed are prohibited. It's legal terminology. But then it goes down to the 4th paragraph on the same page where it says the problem with attempting to use this definition, non-transient, is that it's not included as a use in the bylaw with the Lavoli case, legal logic cited above as prevailing. So in other words, my point, to net it out, sorry to be a little bit long, but my point is that it kind of takes a little while, I guess, for you folks to really be able to study this. And that's my question is, do you have a procedure where you go through and look at what the recommendation is from town council, or is what town council writes, so to speak, for lack of a better term, the gospel truth? Thank you.
So our procedure is, as these come in, we circulate them amongst ourselves.
Right.
For open meeting law rules, we're not allowed to discuss what we read, what we're going to do with the letter, so it is really up to each individual to explore the letter from town council to the extent that they feel necessary before the meeting.
Understood.
Once in public meeting, if somebody is uncomfortable with something in the letter, they can raise it up. If they're uncomfortable with the amount of time that they've had, they could raise it up. That would just be part of the public record.
So then this is something then that you would take up at a subsequent meeting?
We would take it up at this meeting. If we had questions and
Oh, okay.
amongst ourselves, we're letting the people talk now, we'll
Gotcha.
start talking later.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure.
Hi, Julie Connolly, 26 Oak Hill Road. I'm the vice chair of the EDC. We were here last time, and in show of our support of this project, we anticipated to submit a letter of support prior to this meeting. Unfortunately, there was a clerical error in the Southborough clerk's office, and our meeting didn't get posted on time, so we had to cancel our meeting. But I just wanted to, that will be forthcoming as soon as we're able to reschedule the meeting. But I just wanted to raise just a couple of points. One, I just want to make sure everyone's aware, you know, I know this lot has been vacant for quite some time now, but something is going to go up there, and, you know, it's not going to be a vacant lot forever. And We have a proposal in front of us right now that is exactly in line with what was requested in the 2008 master plan that has yet to be implemented. It's exactly in line with with the EDC put out a very extensive survey a year ago, and we had overwhelming response. We had 427 responses to it in a small town. That's pretty significant. Over 90% of the respondents said that they wanted to see restaurant. 67 some odd percent said that they wanted to see small scale retail, and only 15% said that they were opposed to mixed use. So this is something that I'm confident this is what the people in town want. And we have a proposal in front of us that is not only in line with the master plan, with what the residents currently want, with the recommendations of the Urban Land Institute from the recent study that we did, but it's something that fits with the dynamic of the downtown, that's being put forth by a resident who wants to see improvements in downtown. And if he doesn't do it, we don't know what's going to happen to it. He's already indicated that he may have to sell it or franchise it or do something else with it, because it's not fair to make him sit on it because we can't get a proper procedure, and he's being, if it doesn't go through this way, if this is not the correct path, then, he's being misguided. And I think this is something that it looks very negatively in our town. On the EDC, we certainly get complaints from people who are trying to start businesses in Southborough that it is not a very friendly town toward applicants, that processes are long and confusing. And I'm always trying to defend the town and our processes, and we've tried to work with groups, and we've put out a permitting guide, and we're trying to make this process easier for applicants who are looking to do business in Southborough. But really, to have an applicant on what has been identified for 10 years since the master plan study as basically the premier spot for development in downtown, to revitalize the downtown, and we have a good proposal here, and now our applicants getting caught up in the crosshairs of an internal town dispute because we can't figure out what the right way to do it is. I just think that's a shame. This is an opportunity that doesn't come along often. Who knows what will happen if this doesn't go through? And it really is a black spot on our town. If this isn't the right way, we need to come together and figure out how to help this applicant and all applicants who look to do business in Southborough, to do it in a way that is efficient and viable, because we're making doing business in Southborough very, very difficult, and that's very discouraging. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Julie, can I ask you a question about? I remember when you came to the last meeting, I think you said that the EDC's it supported the project, but it didn't take any position on whether this was the right format for it. And has the EDC considered whether it would support
We have not had a
zoning the business village district to specifically include apartments?
Well, so zoning is certainly something that we discuss regularly, and we do have plans to try to again take up the zoning effort downtown. Generally, it was one of the recommendations of the ULI. But I know before my time involved with the EDC and with town business generally, I know that there was the effort that won't be spoke of now because it was such a debacle that nobody wants to talk about it anymore. This is certainly not something that happens overnight, and it's certainly not something that's a guarantee in any way. I think we have some ideas from ULI that hopefully will make it, give us a better shot. But again, we're not a committee with any authority. We're simply advisory. We're looking to promote a strong business community with the residents, and we see our mission as community building. And we are not experts on zoning. We are not, I'm certainly not gonna come and get in the crosshairs of between our town council and our zoning commissioner over who's right. That's not my job, and I just saw this myself today as well. So I don't think that our committee is. I don't want to speak for them because we haven't voted on it, but I doubt we're going to take an opinion on what the ZBA's what the proper procedure is. That's not my job.
Could I ask one question
Sure.
as well, just for clarity? Who developed the master plan? Where did that come from? What
The
authority was that?
2008 master plan was, I believe, and I didn't even live in Southborough in 2008, but I believe it was put forth, it was something that the town paid for. It was a very extensive report that, and probably, I'm sure there are a lot of people in this room who could speak to this better than I can, but I have read it. It is available on the town's website, and it was kind of the big picture plan for the town going forward. It addressed issues like housing and development. It broke down the separate villages in town and talked about ways to, ways to move the town into the future and, address the needs of the citizens, particularly as far as housing. I know there's a big component of it. And if somebody has more to add to that, feel free, because that's my rudimentary understanding.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
My turn?
Your turn.
Jim Caleri, 51 Central Street. I've been listening to the conversation. I've followed this project for a while. I've lived in town almost all my life. I'm a 70-year-old man. I'm the fourth generation. We're about 150 years in the community. I moved back I moved away for about a year when I got married in 1972. I moved back a year later. And I'm going to be honest with you, I might not do that today. As I look at what the town of Southborough was like in the 50s and early 60s, the downtown had an attractive vision to it, other than the old fire station, but that was well kept. The market was well kept. The downtown was tree-setted. It was a beautiful community with the Southborough Arms. It was a place you wanted to live. I've watched the town slide. Quite frankly, it's on a perpetual downturn in my mind. And I'm not the only one of the old townies that feels the same. When I looked at this and heard the discussion tonight, you have, and being a former member of the ZBA, you can grant this, my belief, with a special permit, and actually restrict the use of apartments and remove it from his application. In reality, your grant. Then his option would be to take you to court if he so desired. You can grant this thing with being allowed in what is allowed in our zoning code for the village business district, if you do so. When the actual process goes through, then if it's required a site plan, then he would have to come to the planning board for a site plan. That you cannot eliminate. If he opt to put in something that requires special fire and protection needs, that's again beyond your scope. That would come under the fire and the building department, which is written in law and code. So there is options to do this here. If I looked at that square, the way it has been, I do not want a single building with a Burger King or something stupid downtown. Or something that may not be as attractive and useful. That property has devaluated our town for a long time. So it's within your scope. If you really know what you're doing on what you're doing as a member of the ZBA, you can grant this with a lot of restrictions on it if you so desire. The option is in your hands. If he doesn't like the decision, or if people in the town don't like the ZBA's decision, they have a right to take it to court. In closing this off, when you sit on the ZBA, and I did, and we had some very controversial decisions to be made. One was Eagle Leasing, which we made in the paper, and it showed the Eagle over Chairman Peter Roach, made him look like Adolf Hitler, saying how ZBA was being controlled. I knew in the ZBA, and I stand here tonight, I don't need more friends. I have plenty, and if anybody's my true friend, they'll believe at least I put an honest effort into things, and that's what you have to adapt. You may agree with our town council, or you may agree with the building commissioner. Whatever you think is right for the community, you have in your hands to make that decision. And if we don't like your decision, there are options to appeal it. It's as simple as that. Tonight, you get to do what I did a number of years ago, stand and be counted, and don't be afraid of your decision. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kelly Roney, 2 House Court. I can see the site from my kitchen. As I understand it, mixed use is not controversial. The controversy is about hotel versus apartments, and whether you have the power to grant hotels as a use that are then used as apartments or residential hotel. whether residential hotel would work as something that you can grant. And most of us aren't familiar with residential hotels. They tend to occur in large cities. But is that set in the zoning bylaw? I'm not sure. I think mixed use, of course, is essential to us having a vibrant downtown, which we don't have now. And here's a little rhetorical question to think about. If Mr. Bemis changed his application to be residential hotel, could you vote for it? Could you grant that use? If he called it a hotel and he advertised it on Airbnb and set its prices by night, week, month, year, could he do that? Would you have any recourse? Do you have the power, because of all these boundary issues in the definitions, to do that? I don't know. You have to make the call. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is David Parry, 22 Main Street. First of all, I want to say, it's very important the ZBA is careful and it only approves what really is allowed, and we shouldn't have any sort of pussyfooting around and sort of dealing with things which aren't allowed. That's very important, and I think that it isn't necessary that that happened. We don't want the ZBA pitted against the building inspector or the town council, or town council versus building inspector. It's not necessary. You can avoid all disagreements. And I think it's in your ability tonight to approve this without any disagreement with any of these other parties. What's clear is apartments per se, that word, are not a specifically allowed use in the business village district, so don't list it. Simply don't list it. What is the role of the ZBA here? It's very specific. It's written down there in that article, isn't it? It's to allow multiple uses, period. That's it. That's what your role is. No one else can do that, as Mr. Bemis said. You have the power to approve multiple uses on that lot. Now, what can the multiple uses can you list? You can list all the uses which are written down in that district. Let's go back. We've had multiple uses in this town historically. They've been very attractive. As we've seen, we missed them. Southborough, for heaven's sake, there was a landmark. Very attractive. Everyone's calling for mixed use. We don't have it. So it's, everyone's calling for it to be allowed in the future. You have the power to do that. And by the way, you have, ZBA in the past has approved multiple uses. There's a project on Route 9, isn't there, near Flag Road, with multiple uses. I mean, they're not very attractive. There's used car lots and retail and various other things like that. So that, it's not novel to approve multiple uses. In fact, you're doing it up on Northborough Road, aren't you? So I suggest just like Mr. Bemis said, I wasn't very positive when I heard, oh God, town council's written a letter and that conflicts with building inspector and sort of puts you in the bag. But it's not necessarily the case when you think about it. He's simply saying, don't list any uses which aren't specifically listed. So don't, but approve the multiple uses. Thank you. Okay, one other thing. Did I say, let's get beyond the apartment issue. Just simply don't list the word. And then we're home free. He can do what he wants to do and so forth. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jessica Devine from One Pinecone Lane. I have a question because I'm completely new to this. I don't know anything about zoning. I just know that everybody that I've talked to supports this project, as do I, but I understand it has to be within the law. So are you able to, I know that it seems like the hang-up is the word apartment. Is the zoning board, are you allowed to just strike that word and say, no, we approve it for this use? Like, how does it work?
But I think this is the issue, right? It was an application for a residential apartment. That's actually the attractive feature of it, is that it would have apartments, that would be the second use, right? So if there's a permit that says, okay, multiple uses are allowed, including a hotel or a motel, I think Mr. Bemis is not looking to build a hotel motel, he's looking to build apartments, right? That's what the application was for. I think that's a good idea. The issue is that it's in the business village zoning district. There is a schedule of what are the allowable uses. The zoning code clearly says if it's not listed, then it's not allowed. And apartments isn't allowed. So I strongly support this. I mean, I don't want to agree with Mrs. Luttrell, her interpretation of the zoning code, or what Mr. Cipriano said, but I think that it's probably correct. I'm hopeful that, I think if we spend a lot more time on this, I mean, we still need to spend some time on this tonight, but there's a possibility, I think, with some momentum behind this project, that there could be a article at town meeting coming up in March to rezone the business village district to specifically permit apartments, and then this project gets built a lot quicker, I think, and cleaner. And there's this whole issue about whether the ZBA is allowing something that's not allowed is not on the table, right? So, but if that's gonna happen, it needs to start now, because the warrant's gonna close in December, January. So, I mean, that's, I'm just letting you know my feeling on this application. I strongly want to support it. But I also think that if we were to allow it, and then, basically say, even though you're looking to build apartments, we're gonna permit it for hotel, motel, you're gonna have a problem with the planning board down the road on an application for site plan review. And that problem just would be avoided if there was a amendment to the zoning bylaw that just expressly permitted it. And I would be hopeful that the Economic Development Committee would be behind that, because it clearly promotes, good projects in town. I think there's time to get some momentum behind that, but that's the issue, in my opinion.
So the answer is no, you can't say we only approve it for this use, we don't approve it for that use?
Can we not just say, we're being asked to approve something for a multiple use? And then again, I'm looking here, it says include.
Sorry, go ahead.
Are we not able to say we approve it for multiple uses as allowable, as currently allowable? That's my understanding, that we could, tonight we had an application that we okayed, but then did not okay part of it and made that part of our decision. I don't know why we can't.
But then down the road, if you want to have apartments at the site, do you want to have apartments at the site or not?
If you look at the hearing notice, we talked about the use code and the building code.
You can use,
Here, yeah.
And I don't have I was looking for my actual packet, and I don't have that one, but you have it. Thank you. If you don't mind, because that's why I said the asterisk in my application is the whole thing. I was very specific about how we did this when we wrote it, because clearly, it would be a lot easier if the apartment term was a defined term in the zoning bylaw, but it's not. Yes.
that's the other parts of it.
Correct. It's just not a defined term in the bylaw. So anytime anyone says apartment all tonight, it doesn't mean anything in Southborough, because it's not a defined term. Accessory apartment is. So all I'm getting at is it's not a defined term. It's not a defined term in your zoning bylaw. So it's just a meaningless term as far as I'm concerned. You can go to Black's Law or the other one, the canons there, that was cited in the town council's letter. What I'm getting at in my application was that it had an asterisk at the end of that to say my whole collective application is what I've submitted to you. No, you don't have the hearing notice either.
That's right.
Oh, I apologize. Thank you. I'm sorry. I have the right glasses on, and I do. So we're speaking a special permit to construct a mixed-use building that will consist of B-use businesses on the first floor and one-bedroom R-use apartments on the second floor. Relief requested is pursuant to Section 184, Board of Appeals, may by special permit allow several different uses and otherwise permitted in district. Okay, and then you go to that R2 definition in the building code, okay, and that has that expanded about all of the different transient and non-transient components. So that's where we stood with this, and I provided you with that section, the R2 residential group section. It's apartment houses, boarding houses, congregate living facilities, convents, dormitories, fraternities, sororities, hotels, non-transient, live work units, monasteries, motels, non-transient, vacation timeshare properties. That's the whole collective.
Yeah.
So again, because apartments isn't a defined term.
Well, and the question is, because it's not defined or listed, it becomes specifically prohibited, and it's discussed in your application. I'm tending to lean towards what Paul is saying, is that we're really being asked about a special permit for multiple uses. I think we can condition that with what uses are acceptable.
I mean, I would think so, yeah.
You know, in his first page of his application, it's permit multiple uses on same property, including, but it didn't say only including, is my kind of view.
I mean, I'm reading that as, there's more than two things saying including here. There's obviously not gonna be more than two uses, so it's just saying.
There could be more than two uses. Retail separately is a separate use for the thing, so.
But that's, I mean, I think it's simply kept as whatever is allowable. I mean, if it's not an allowable use, we're not giving a special use allowance here.
And all I say is, if there was an easier way to do this, believe me, I'd be the first one wanting to do it. I do not like the path that I have to follow here. But again, it's been 6 years of trying to wait for some attractive zoning to come forward that would allow us to do this. And looking at this provision in the bylaw, that's really where we're at. Nothing has happened. I don't want to wait till Springtown meeting in March and hope that 150 people are going to be convinced, as you are, that this is good. And maybe my article comes up at the end of the night, and those who stay are the ones who don't want it. And then I'm subject to not going anywhere. So I'm working within what I have the ability to do. It'd be a hell of a lot cleaner and a lot easier. But at the end of the day, it's going to work the same way. Because the R2 building code requirement, again, the use code, that's what's going to govern how the building gets built, how the building gets used. And it's going to act the same way to that term that starts with an A that isn't in the bylaw. And that's all that I can say. That's where we're going to be. That's what I'm promising you tonight, because that's what it's going to look like, and that's what it's going to act like. But I can't use that term. You can't use that term either, except you can exclude me from using it because it's not a defined term in the bylaw.
But I don't think it's necessary to exclude something that's not allowable.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just, it's not allowed.
It doesn't matter whether it's a defined, like, I thought, the question you raised about office buildings, I mean, in the highway district, in the business highway district, it says permitted uses up to 50,000 square feet include office building, office bank, office building. I mean, it doesn't matter that it's not defined, it's that it's not listed in the schedule of uses in the business village district. And it's a totally different application if it's for a hotel motel rather than apartments, right? And it should be noticed as such.
Okay.
And then we also have to consider whether the multiple uses are compatible with each other, so that if it's a building with, you know, a hotel and a motel, is that compatible with whatever other use you want on the first floor? I completely understand why there's not gonna be an office on the second floor, and it's much better to have some residential use, because that's the whole point of mixed use, promote people living downtown. There'd be more customers for the businesses downtown, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I completely get that. And, I mean, I think you're assuming that it's easier to try to get the permit from the ZBA, withstand any appeals that come. I think it's actually easier it's easier for me to say because I'm not the applicant, but to give it a shot at town meeting. I mean, because then I think some of the zoning changes in the past have lost because they're too abstract. This is very clear. You know, people would see, this is a project. If you vote for this amendment, this goes forward. And if it doesn't, someone that is a local developer who wants to put up his own money to, at risk to do this, will lose this, and who knows what the economy will be like 2 years from now. I think it'll be very clear that way. You're not convinced?
I'm not, and it's just time. I mean, if there was a special town meeting in the fall, I wouldn't mind waiting a short period of time and see where it goes, but I'm not gonna wait till spring. Who knows what the economy's gonna be next year? Who knows if I can finance it next year? I know I can finance it now and keep going forward. The economy's robust.
Yeah, but if it was approved for multiple use, and you go forward with whatever allowable uses are, and you have the building up, that would not prevent you from going in the spring to the town meeting to say, I think I'd be better off with apartments here now, and I want a special meeting for that.
I suppose I could do that part in tandem. That wouldn't bother me, because then I can go to the planning board and I know I have to go there, believe me. I don't like the path I have to follow. I don't like that there's a planning board member sitting behind me speaking against the project.
Well, she was speaking as an individual.
Individually, no, but when she wrote the email, I didn't know that at the time, but I don't like the fact that there's not support there from the individual speaking.
I did not speak against the project, just for the record.
Okay.
I spoke against it being not.
I know you weren't here at the last meeting to express yourself, but all I had was the email, Mimi, I'm sorry. But again, I don't like the path I have to follow. I have waited impatiently to try to find a way to get this to go forward, and I've worked within the decisions that I have. I have permits that I already have secured that I want to maintain. I have to keep the momentum going forward. It'd be a lot easier a different way. Believe me, it'd be a lot easier. I just don't see that anyone's going to help that path.
Okay, next up on public comment.
John Green, 10 Tower Road. Just for the record, I do support the project, but, and Andrew, hold your breath, but I agree with Andrew. I think the most appropriate way would be to go through town meeting. The issue with this is then you set precedents, right? How many hotel motels are we gonna have in the village business district? Like all of a sudden anybody can say it's gonna be a hotel motel. And the appropriate way to go about this would be an update to the zoning code. And that would happen through town meeting. Thank you.
Mary Quirk, 11 East Main. I have a couple questions for Mr. Bemis that just as neighborhood people we'd like to know. When you do a multi-use situation, is it specified what's going to go in there? Is it a restaurant? Is it, is there some kind of definition to it? And also, in the hotel motel level of it, is it a 2.5 story or a 3-story building? And can the third floor also be occupied residentially?
Actually, thank you, because I had a question that there's dormers there on the third floor. Is there a third floor?
There's trusses. It's 2.5-story building. I mean, that's what's intended. Those are trusses. We wanted dormers to, again, give it that colonial feel, and we definitely want to go with the cupola. So that's the whole
I noticed
point.
There's no stairs going to a third, so there's no utilization of a third floor.
It'd be a smoke hatch or something to get to the third floor. It's not.
So I don't believe it.
If there was going to be access, if there was going to be access, there could be a stair access, but it would be to go to the truss level of the building.
No, we're just asking that because last time, I don't know if you're aware of it, but you kept calling it the third story. So then we from the neighborhood, we were like, is there a third story also? And if it's given this special permit, obviously residential apartments are a lot more attractive to our neighborhood than a hotel motel would be. But, and we are assuming from looking at this drawing that the planning board and the building inspectors would be regulating the frontage of this big building and the placement of it so that Mr. Bemis can have, I think it's 28 parking spaces, and that it all fits on a very limited piece of land. So that was our concerns, that we were discussing. Obviously, the last time we were all here, we were talking about the traffic and the other things. But if the project is going to be permitted and going through, those are just questions that we feel the planning boards, the building inspectors need to be the people working with Mr. Bemis.
So the answer on the uses, again, I'm asking only for those listed in the Village Business District. And as far as the setbacks are concerned, we do identify them on the plan. Ms. Luttrell brought up the fact that if you do a residential building in the Village Business District, you observe the RB setback requirements. However, this is a commercial building. It will be commercial. That's the other concern I guess I would have, is that with the mixed use, someone could conclude that it's not. I would think that right out of the gate, if I have retail or office on the first floor, it's a commercial building with the residential component on the second floor. I don't have to observe that setback. But that would be the concern I'd have going to town meeting, that someone could introduce something like that. And now all of a sudden, it's not viable any longer. It is viable if we use the village business setbacks for a commercial development. So again, those are the pitfalls that come with where you're suggesting I go. And I'm trying to work with what we have. And at the end of the day, Ms. Quirk, that she's brought up, I'll call it a hotel motel, and it's gonna look like that A word again. I'm not gonna use it. It's not the A word. I know you do, and I do too. Unfortunately, I can't use it.
Where I tend to agree with Andrew, I might be a little naive, but I mean, I know now that, things are different, and that to change things, it needs to be at a town meeting. But I think that there would be, I don't know, I could be naive, but I think there would actually be some interest or support behind that. That's just.
From my perspective, I think it would have already happened, and if you look at the Village Business District and we look at the densities, again, this is what's viable with what we have here. And if there's some reduction or cap on it that someone puts in some other threshold, and it just doesn't work. So I'm better off going with what I know I see in front of me than a potential rezoning that could make it less viable. That's all.
Well, but back to my original point is you don't have to wait to do that. I mean, you can go forward with what you're doing, and if you want to,
well, right, no, your scenario is no, that's not.
And you go to town meeting and say,
if the board
I'd like to do
was
this.
willing to support it, then I guess I get the best of both worlds. But
Are there any other questions or comments out there? Yep.
Claire Reynolds, again, 104 Main Street. For those of us who were around, and I don't know who in this room other than Sam, maybe David, who were around when the planning board tried the last zoning change. Anybody remembers?
There have been.
These things do not happen overnight. Zoning changes are very extensive, and as somebody correctly said, because of the change in the town meeting date this year, the warrant closes in December. I think it's mid-December when the warrant closes. And it is a lengthy and very controversial discussion.
Yeah, and I would agree.
That's not germane to what we're here to discuss this evening either.
Well, from the standpoint of letting this go to zoning changes.
We're not saying letting it go. We're making a suggestion. That's not what, we're not.
Yeah, I think we're saying we know that it's not an allowed use within the existing zoning code, which I find amazing. It's not addressed at all. But it is something that the town meeting can take up to specifically make the change.
And that's what I was.
We cannot make
it. Yeah, we can't
No, I
do
understand you can't make it, but for anybody who would be thinking of doing zoning changes, it's not something that happens overnight.
Yeah.
But I think what you're talking about is very pertinent to what we're considering tonight, and that if you started to work on this now, that would increase the chances that the article would be higher up on the warrant and would get the attention that it deserves rather than be way at the end.
I believe that the order of the articles is up to the discretion of the town administrator, and somebody else can correct me on that if that's not right. So it's not first come, first served.
But I think part of what has been difficult at town meeting in the past is something that's not worded carefully. I think, to Andrew's point, you have now till when the warrant needs to be closed to write something that does have the right language that would address it.
So,
That's my experience, is that the ones that fail, there's loopholes in them and people bring up something and tear it apart. It has to be very carefully thought out, I would agree. But I
So-
think appropriately worded, it would work.
yeah, but I think the point that Paul was making is that what we're being asked to look at is this application based on our current zoning laws. What we can spitball with anybody about what we could do at a town meeting sometime down the future, so on and so forth, but that's really not what we're deciding. We're on this application, multiple uses per the Business Village District as it's defined currently. That's really where we're at. You know, the idea that maybe it could happen somewhere later at a different point, you know, maybe a comet's gonna hit Southborough, and it's really a moot point, you know? So, we're gonna focus on the application.
Deep thoughts by our chairman.
I'd also like to point out, too, that the concern that we're gonna have motels everywhere all of a sudden, those are already an allowed use.
Yeah,
If we were concerned about motels overrunning downtown Southborough, it would have happened already.
It's an allowable use, so we can't,
it's an allowable use, we couldn't stop it if they wanted to do it. So, are there any other comments from the gallery? Oh. So, hotel motel is an allowed use already. So, anybody could come up, they don't even have to come to us. If it fits with the dimensional requirements and they don't need a variance, they could put a motel in downtown, in the Business Village District by right. Don't have to ask anybody, they have to get site plan approval, obviously, but they don't need any special permit for it. It's an allowed use by itself in the Business Village District, right?
Over 2,000 square feet,
And
the
it's
use
dimensional.
needs to go to the planning board for a special permit.
Right.
I said it would have to go to the planning board. I said they wouldn't need anything from us to grant it, it's an allowed use. Right?
Well, you're granting more than one use on a lot. The
We're not-
use,
She asked a question about motels in general for
well,
the
the
Business
use,
Village.
well, the use over 2,000 square feet requires a special permit from the planning board in the
Agreed.
Business Village District.
Okay, yeah, so
It's just that,
if it was 1,999 square feet, they could do it. Yes.
Hi, Karen Canal, 15 Main Street. Thank you, Mr. Bemis. So, like most other people in the room, it's really exciting to think that something is finally, positive is finally going to happen, maybe, in downtown Southborough. And I just had a couple of comments and then one question. I was thinking about this, and I actually manage property. And one property that I manage in downtown Natick, the town did not want apartments. So the developer that I was working with said, okay, we'll make them condominiums. And then he purchased back all of the condominiums and rents them out as apartments. So the reason I'm saying that is because it's kind of like taking a square peg and jamming it into a round hole. What is the intent? So I think I'm hearing that the intent is to have a mixed-use building, which we know Southborough residents want, which we know is good for towns, small towns, and we definitely, I believe, are all in agreement that it would be excellent for Southborough. So what we're really doing is playing around with semantics and saying that we're gonna put apartments in downtown Southborough, and in order to fit the code, we're gonna call them hotel, motel, Holiday Inn. Is that correct? Am I following this? Okay. So for me, I guess the question is, well, two questions. If you don't mind me asking, Mr. Bemis, do you have the intent of doing this project and then selling the property immediately?
I've put a lot of effort into it. I want to stay with it. That's why I'm here. And if I can get approvals and I can get finance, then I'll stay with it. I mean, it's simple as that.
Okay. So I guess just as a townsperson, a taxpayer, someone that's lived in town my whole life, and I manage property in town, I am in complete support of what Mr. Bemis is trying to do. I completely understand the financial restraints that a business person has, and being told that you have to then, go to another board or the town meeting. I understand that that may be protocol, but it's very difficult for a business person who's also maybe trying to do other things. It's just very time-consuming. So I'm in complete support of calling apartments hotels. I've seen it happen in property that I manage, and it's worked quite well, and the town is thriving because of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. How you doing?
I'm well, thank you.
Any comments you want to make? Any questions to Mr. Bemis or?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, from what I understand that's in front of us is that, we're being asked to allow multiple uses on the same property. I'm stopping at the end of the sentence there. And, I mean, I think I'm okay with that. I mean, it seems to me that the consensus is okay with that out there, so I don't have any other logistic questions, so I'm good.
Okay. Debbie?
Okay, I do have some questions. I actually was learning a little bit about septics this week and speaking to the Board of Health, and found this all very interesting. And I think all your historical digging has really paid off, because you were able to get actually a larger amount of septic than you're using. And I've noticed a couple of the letters, there are people who are looking for restaurants. You've heard people say bakery, cafe, restaurants, and yet you're not using, I think that you maybe even denied the full capacity that the Board of Health was looking to give you. And so I wanted to just ask you about that, if that's something that you'd consider or had considered, because people are asking about that.
Right, there is already a restaurant in downtown Southborough. My goal would be not to impact them in any way. I have discussed that with that family. And there is also a small store in downtown Southborough, so from my perspective, those are two uses we really don't need another one of, and I'd like to try to have something else that can complement those versus take away potentially from their customers. I think the bakery route probably does make a lot of sense. I personally would like to have one there, and that they may see that as some competition, but I think it would be very limited if one did open. I'd hope someone might come forward and want to do that, and if they're going to have a bakery, they might want to sell it for coffee, that sort of thing, but we're going to keep it simple. There is a certain amount of septic flow, and we have to be careful how we allocate it. And I did actually go there to the Board of Health today because I did not ask for the full amount that we were permitted to have, and we probably should get the rest of it because we're entitled to it. So we did talk about that today.
Yeah, and then
it's available, so.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then my other question was, I don't think there's any room, but because you do have available septic according to what was discussed or provided in with your approval, is there any thought of adding or something onto this plan? Is there I don't know, I don't think there's room,
we have a
but
finite space, right, that's it.
Yeah,
And
taking away
there
space.
were setbacks that we had to get waivers from, but we probably would go back and revisit because we did prove the historical uses.
Yeah.
So.
I have to admit, I brought up last time that I had a problem with apartment, and I think actually, to be honest, Attorney Cipriano's notice was clarifying for me. And I guess I feel also just compelled to say that I don't think it's simply, I don't know enough about, scratching out the word apartment and saying, no, it's really a hotel motel. I think, gee, there has to be more than that to this, and I think Mrs. Luttrell brought up a couple of things. But I do think the application is incorrect, and I brought that up last time. And I also think that the plot plan is incorrect, because I read the residential 174 8.4 F5 as residential dwellings in the business village district must comply with Res B, and that's where the 125-foot frontage comes from, and also 30 feet because you're on Newton Street. And I think,
But we're not we're a commercial use, that's what I'm saying, is that it's a retail facility with a residential component, and I don't believe we have to meet that.
so I'd be interested to hear if other members of the board, but my interpretation of that is this is a residential use in a commercial space, and maybe there's case law or something like that, but that's my interpretation, is that you need to meet the residential B district standards. And it actually says it right in our zoning.
Right, so here's where I've thought about that, Ms. Luttrell brought it up. We can't approve a residential use for him. It's not an allowed use by itself. There's other ways to do it, but we can't approve that. So we can't enforce setbacks for something we can't approve. Hotel motel is a commercial use, and therefore the commercial setbacks would be the applicable ones, because that's what they are, and that's the only thing that we could approve for him based on the values and the list of items in the zoning code.
Okay, so, I don't know that I agree with that. Is there case law on that?
I have not looked for case law. If we're,
I mean, maybe it could be challenged in court or something, because I'm not suggesting anything like that, but
Yeah.
these are people who would be living there, so I would think that they would be subject to the residential standards.
but if he built a motel, then they would be governed by motel rules per the state. So, again, I think Ms. Connell mentioned it's a bit of a semantics thing here, but we have the ability to grant multiple uses of what's allowable in that zone. And I believe that's what Mr. Bemis is asking for.
I'm asking for the uses, but also more importantly, the building inspector did, as part of the review, did look at our site plan and did conclude that the only thing that I needed to come to you for was the multiple use request, because I would think that, and I don't want to speak for Mr. Robidoux on this point, but he didn't have to bring up that issue because I did comply. I am observing it. I do have the table of zoning in the lower right-hand side of the sheet, and we are observing the village business component for the business uses that we have, so.
So even if
Mr.
it's mixed
Robidoux
use,
stay?
you
He
wouldn't.
is still here, I can see that far over,
Yeah.
good. Do you want to have him comment on that, so you feel more?
Yeah,
more-
in mixed use, do you consider the more stringent of the two, or what usually happens there?
Thank you. Mark Robidoux, Building Inspector. So what they're talking about is if you build a single-family house in a business village district, then it would have to meet the RB zone. It doesn't say dwelling unit, it says dwelling. It's a single-family house. So even if it was an apartment, that would be a dwelling unit. So if this project is a commercial project, it's a mixed-use project, it's a commercial project, it's a totally different, it'll be built under a totally different code, a commercial code, not a residential code. What they're saying is if you want to build a single-family house in that particular district, then it would have to meet the setbacks for RB. Otherwise, the commercial project, and again, that would be vetted under my office. We'd come in and we'd look at that. Thank you.
Can I add to that?
Yes?
174-7 says, where an activity may be classified under more than one use, you go to the more specific or to the more restrictive classification.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. No, I mean, that's it. I still have the same concern as last time. I think the application is incorrect. I think it would be cleaner to correct the application. I don't think it needs to, I don't think the zoning board has to allow that you can use multiple uses, because it's in the zoning code that you can use multiple, have a project for multiple mixed use. So I think that the applicants should be specific with what they're trying to accomplish. I think it's a nice project, but I think that it's just, you know, the application is incorrect, and I would have a hard time approving it.
Could I just ask, so, I'm sorry, but if I could, so with the multiple uses though, we're not entitled to do more than one. I mean, that has definitely been the case. I do need the zoning board of appeals to allow me to do more than one thing on the property. That's clear, and that's why I gave you that section. So I do need your support for that. You're the only board that can grant that.
Well,
I can go to the planning board for all one use, but not for the multiple use. You are the only authority that can do that.
No, I agree, but I don't think it's this board's obligation to tell you how to use, you know, what the use is going to be. So since it says apartments, and we know that apartments is not an allowable use, then I think that we need to strike the apartment, correct the application.
Okay.
And then it does meet the guideline as long as we've got the dimensional aspects set.
So I think dimensional was set. So on the spirit of what you just did at Northborough Road, though, what I'm getting at is that you did put everything in that could possibly be there, and that's what I'm again, this is an evolving process as we go through this. That's what I am looking for you to do this evening, is memorialize those allowable uses so we have that flexibility.
So I think the difference on Northborough Road is that his application requested any allowable use that's available in the district, whereas yours highlighted specific uses, one of which is not allowable.
But again, the asterisk brings the cat, right, I put that in there specifically so you would look at it all, because we all kind of think of it, that A word is what we use to talk about, and we've talked about it every time we talk about it tonight, but it's not the operative word that we need to use.
I mean, I'm still back to thinking and understanding what you're saying is, all right, so multiple uses, including, so we're okay with commercial, we're okay with office, we're not okay with apartment. That in a decision would say no apartment or any other allowable uses.
So, just getting right to that, why would we want to do that? Why would we want to grant a permit that excludes apartments? The whole appeal of it is to have apartments on the first floor so that there's people living there, you attract people to live there.
But we're not allowed to
whole
approve
point. So-
something that isn't, that's not within our jurisdiction to approve something that's not allowable.
To the point, I think that, you know, respecting the applicant's time here, I mean, I've made my view clear. I want to support this strongly. I just think that the concerns that were raised about whether apartments are an allowable use, I feel like it was advertised as multiple uses, apartments and business on the first floor. That's what would make it attractive. I think that there would be support for it, for a bylaw change at the next upcoming meeting. If we could just get right to it, and I would encourage the applicant to do that. So I feel that I cannot support this application for all the reasons I just said, even though I strongly support the project.
So let me ask this question. If the application read, permit multiple uses on the same property, including commercial, office, hotel, motel, how would you feel?
We don't want a hotel or motel on the site.
But it's allowable.
A hotel and motel is an allowable use. And it's not my job to instruct him how to run his hotel motel. It's an allowable use. It could be done within the district.
Okay, so then why didn't the application say that?
That's the sticky point. That's the tricky point that we're all talking about, that we're all talking around.
So, I don't know, I'm just getting right to the point so that you know how I feel about this. Because I don't think it's respectful to you to, continue this and to have another discussion where we kind of go round and round,
So I can count. So that's what I was looking for, was to see where we're
That's
going.
the
Because
signal I
I
was
have to
sending.
tell you that, I do want to go forward with this, but if failure is in my future, I will just put a for sale sign up and let someone else play the game. So that's where I'm at. And so I don't need, if I know there's support there, I am going to come back. You meet in a month. I did get some timelines from Karen. I will file another application with you, and it will say hotel motel, because that's the only allowable use that's gonna work on the second floor. That's what you're gonna get. But if you're gonna sit there and tell me now that you're not gonna support it, then I'm not gonna waste my time. I'll put the for sale sign up tomorrow, and I'll go, like I said, I'll take my blocks and go home. Because that's really the only thing I can do is what is allowed. And you're telling me to go to town meeting, and I will try that in tandem, but I'm gonna keep walking the walk I'm on, because I can't afford not to.
And I think.
And I'm afraid of what could come out of town meeting, because if town meeting
crapshoot.
comes back and puts a restrictive setback on it, then it doesn't work anyways. So it doesn't really matter. They could give me the apartment use, but if they give me a greater setback, it doesn't work again. Do you follow me?
Yeah, but just a
Yeah,
one-
structured I'm gonna put structured parking in downtown
Yeah, so
Southborough.
just one thing to be very clear. So I have really diligently considered this application. I made clear, I strongly support it. So, any suggestion that the vote that I took, that the property is gonna be sold because of that.
Oh, no, I'm not saying, I'm saying from my, I'm not
That
suggesting,
comes up
no, sir.
often with the, you
No,
know,
sir, no, sir,
if-
no, sir.
Unless you vote for this right now.
No,
the
no,
whole
no, I
thing
didn't
is-
say that tonight. I'm willing to refile to correct that component of it. I'm not asking you to tell me your vote. I'm asking you that if I can correct the terms that I'm using, is that what is the issue here? Is that the word apartment is in my application with an asterisk next to it that covered all those other things. If that's the turnoff, then I have the ability to file at your next meeting and continue with this process. I think that you have the ability to put the uses that are allowed in the bylaw, but it's not the case.
Don't we have the ability to say, yeah, we approve it with office, commercial, but not apartment, because it's not allowable?
And, so I think the thing we need to look at, if we're going to go down that path, is uses that are compatible. So we'd actually need to pull up the available business uses in the Business Village District. And if we're really going to have, office retail on the first floor, of the remaining available Business Village uses, which ones wouldn't be compatible on the second floor?
But why would that be for us to determine what's compatible? And that's subjective.
Because that's part of our decision criteria, is that they're compatible.
I still think it's subjective and something that, we're not supposed to be subjective.
We could just,
That is very subjective.
yeah. So, rather than being specific, which he was trying to do, we think to be less subjective, we should just be broad and say available uses within the business district is.
Allowable uses, yeah.
That's what he's saying.
That's what he's asking for. And if that's the case, and we specifically deny apartments.
Well, because
Based
it's
on
not,
the
because it's not an allowable use.
Because apartments are not an allowable use, then are we comfortable with multiple uses on this location? I think I'm comfortable with multiple uses on this location.
I'm comfortable.
I think, we're kind of, you gotta be careful how you look at it. Like, we're very willing to say apartments are not specifically stated here, so therefore they're not an allowed use. But motels are.
Yes.
And then we say, well, we don't want a motel. You can't have it both ways.
But I don't think we can say we can't, I don't think we can say we don't want something that's allowable.
Correct.
So that's the more generic version. So the second question I would have is, would everybody feel more comfortable based on the way this application is written if it came back more along the lines of what we're talking about?
So we're recommending that this get withdrawn and then a new one is filed?
I'm asking a question.
Well, that's what I'm saying, so are you saying withdraw this one and then?
I'm not gonna
No, no.
tell the applicant what he should do. I'm just trying to get a sense as to if that's the,
Different language.
if that's really what we're getting hung up on, I
It is.
want to,
It is the word apartment.
I think we have
There's
to
no question.
look at the plot plan as well.
so that'll, yep. So the plot plan,
It has to be resubmitted with an appropriate plot plan.
and that will be as part of the new application. But if we're really just getting hung up because this application has apartments in it, then I think we kind of know where we stand right now.
Right.
And it's up to the applicant to make a decision as to how he would like to move forward.
And that's why I was saying, and I apologize, Andrew, that's really all I'm just trying to do is cut to the chase. So I would respectfully request that you allow me to withdraw the petition. Do expect to see me at your next meeting, because I will get this application right back to Karen. And I'll be before you with those listed uses in the zoning bylaw.
I assume without prejudice?
Yes, please, without prejudice, thank you.
All right.
What that actually means, but it's always.
So, right now, on this one, with that request, we should close the public hearing. So do we have a motion to close the public hearing on the matter as?
Do we vote to accept your,
Do we vote before we close the public hearing, or close the public hearing and then vote on his request?
Well, there's nothing else for us further to discuss about
Right.
this, so you can close it, sure.
That's what I was thinking.
okay, I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All in favor? Aye?
I'll put that in writing.
And then entertain a motion to,
Well, do we have any further discussion among ourselves on this?
yeah, I mean, we can discuss more here.
I think I'm in favor of allowing the applicant to withdraw his application without prejudice.
So am I.
And you would like to see it rewritten in a manner that's.
Oh, just-
It's
with-
his decision as to how he wants to proceed. We can't,
Well, we're just discussing, I'm saying.
Right.
yeah, we,
But I think we've made
The
it
idea
clear,
is-
we're saying,
if we
You
allow
can't
him to
put something
withdraw
in
without prejudice, the idea is we're open to seeing something along this line again. so
Okay.
just without prejudice.
All right, so I'll make a motion to accept the applicant's withdrawal without prejudice.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. And you'll get that, and you're doing that in writing now? Okay. All right. Last item on the agenda here
Do we have minutes?
is the minutes. However, minutes aren't ready yet. It's,
did I miss something?
nope, the last meeting we had was rather lengthy. It has taken quite a while to transcribe and get those into minute format. We're still within our, posting minutes and recording them timeframe, so we don't have anything to worry about there, but we will have the meeting minutes from August 29th at our October 17th meeting. And
look forward to
then we
that.
should have these minutes as well. So with that, I don't have anything else. So if anybody would like to adjourn,
I do.
yeah, you want to move that?
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Make me nervous there for a second.
We're done.